Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about all 28 books that I read in January. Starting off the year, I decided to start with the Boys of Tommen series. I finally read this whole series and I am so glad that I finally read it, but so sad. Like, I can't believe I was putting it off for as long as I did. Who told me to put it off? No one except for myself. And it's just like, I am kind of annoyed at myself, but then kind of glad that I did, because I feel like I read it at the perfect time, and I read it and I wish I went back to when I didn't read it, just because it's so good and I wish I could reread it for the first time again. Binding 13 and Keeping 13 follows Johnny and Shannon, and then Saving 6 and Redeeming 6 follows Aoife and Johnny. Taming 7 follows Claire and Gibbsy, and then Releasing 10 follows Hugh, I think that's how you say his name, sorry if I said that wrong, and Lizzie. Oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting these books to be what they were. I knew going into them that they was going to be hard to read. I knew that. That's why I was putting them off for so long. But no one told me how hard they was going to be to read. Like, anyway, there was emotional times. I did full on sob, especially at Keeping 13. At a certain scene, no joke when I say that I was tearing up. I came into my sister to talk to her about the book, and no joke, I started sobbing. I came and I went, Keeping 13, and I just bawled my eyes out. I'm not even going to be embarrassed by it because that ripped my heart out, and little old me at the time did not know it was only going to get worse. It was only going to get worse. Anyway, I could talk about this series forever. I was going to do a reading vlog on it. I just did loads of TikToks instead, just because the experience, you know. I couldn't bring myself to pick up the camera for this series. I'm disappointed that I didn't now, but I'm kind of glad that I didn't, just because, you know, I was like immersed into the series and these books, and I don't know, maybe one day I'll reread them and I'll film a vlog then. But absolutely love the series. If you want to see all my reactions and everything like that, go over to my TikTok. I think there's a link in the description below. If not, it's just Books with Dreamcatcher, and oh my goodness, that's my reaction. So as you can tell, all of these books, well, 5 stars. Absolutely love this series. Highly recommend. I'm going to move on before that's literally all I talk about. And while the books are right next to me, I might as well show them you. Then I read Fearless and Fearful, and these ones I really enjoyed also. The way that this one went, I wasn't expecting it. Like, from the ending of Reckless, I just didn't think it was going to go the way that it did, but obviously once everything was explained, it was perfect. And then I loved getting this point of view. I don't want to say too much because it is in the middle of a series. In case no one's read it, I don't want to spoil anything, but that's what I'm going to say about these ones. Then we have Dr. Single Dad, and I read this one because I wanted something like quick, short, and something that I thought that I was going to love. And this one I didn't enjoy as much as I thought, which was shocking considering it is a single dad one. But I don't know, I did read it in one sitting like I expected. Every single dad book that I've read I've always like loved, but this one was probably like my least favorite I've ever read. It wasn't bad at all, but I don't know, this one follows Dax, who is like really focused on his medical career, and then he ends up having like a one night stand at one point, and then he finds out that actually he has a baby. He has a little girl who has just been born, but the mother is like giving her up for adoption or something. So then obviously he decides to take her in, and then that is when his whole life has changed. But he feels like he's not going to be able to love this child because it wasn't in his plan. He decides to get a nanny, and that is when he meets Iraira. I think that's how you say her name. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. This one was like an average read for me. Then I read Unholy Tazar. I think that's how you say it. I'm not too sure. And this one actually shocked me because I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. I went into it blind, not knowing much about it. But this follows Cecilia, who is rescued by Maxim. I think that's how you say his name. Sorry if I said that wrong. Who is a powerful leader in the underworld, but then she ends up finding out that he is actually her best friend's uncle, but also someone who she had a one night stand with previously, not that long ago. So this is kind of a, I don't want to say dark romance per se, but it kind of falls under that line, should we say. But like I said, I did really enjoy this one. I did feel a little bit disconnected with like the chemistry between the characters in the beginning of the book, but it did improve near the end. Then we have Unhinged. Now this book was definitely unhinged. Like, the title of this book literally describes this whole book. No joke. I went into this blind, not expecting much from it. I didn't know what to expect. but what I got was not what I expected. But can I just say, I did really enjoy it. I'm looking forward to reading the second book. But this follows Avery, who is sent to Lilydale Foundation Centre, which is like a supposed rehabilitation facility. I think I said that wrong, but it's fine. That is actually an asylum and kind of like a prison, should we say. She goes in there. She also gets like a diagnosis of like PTSD, but she goes in there thinking it's one thing. It turns out to be like an even worse place than what she thought. This is also like a why choose romance, which I wasn't expecting at all. I went into it and it was kind of like, oh my goodness, this is weird. But then I realised it was why choosing that. I was like, oh okay, this makes a lot more sense. But the way that this book ended really does make you want to go like dive into the second one. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't. Then we have Hot for Slayer by Annie Hazelwood. This one is like a little novella, and honestly I enjoyed this more than what I thought. But this follows a centuries-old vampire who must care for her enemy, who has lost his memory. Not only has he lost his memory, he's also a vampire slayer, so he doesn't know that. Then I read Addicted to You and Ricochet. I finally started this series, and honestly I thought I was going to love it a lot more than what I did, only because I feel like it was like not overhyped. I feel like it was really hyped years ago, and I've hyped it up in my head, and I've waited years to read this book, well, these books. And I did enjoy it, don't get me wrong, like, I rated them quite highly, but I just feel like I went into it thinking it was going to be a 5-star read. It wasn't, so it was kind of like underwhelming because I went into it with high expectations. But I still enjoyed it. I do have some doubts about Lily, and I'm hoping that it will get better throughout the series, but I'm looking forward to Daisy's story. Then I reread Him by L.L. Ash and Unconditional by Q.B. Tyler. Normally I read this every single year. I realised I didn't read it last year, which is crazy to me. But this was like my 5th time rereading both of these books because I absolutely love them. Don't know why, they're just like a comfort read for me, and I thought at the beginning of the year, why not? I'm mood reading, you know, and I wanted to reread them, so that is exactly what I did. So we all know my thoughts about them. I'm going to go past them. Then I read Wrong by Jenna Aston. Now this one, I've never heard of this book before, but there's like short film, like real short. I watch it all the time and I'm obsessed, and there's a film on there based off this book, and I was like, oh, interesting. So I did watch that, and then I read the book and I was like, I want to see the comparison. I was surprised by this book, I'm not gonna lie. It was really spicy, like way too spicy for no reason. I didn't enjoy the spice in this. It went into a lot of detail of things that just didn't need descriptions for. I felt like the female main character was way too desperate. Like, she was given desperate, you know. And the MMC was very confusing because he was saying that he wasn't going to do this thing for her. Spoiling it too much. He said, I'm not going to do this for you, yada yada, but then he gives in to way too quickly. So I don't know, but this does follow a college student, Sophie, who has a crush on this guy that comes to the coffee shop she works at every single day. He is much older. Turns out that he is her gynecologist. I'll leave it there. Then I read Finding Her Panthers. Now this one is one that I didn't discover, but a family member discovered, and they were reading it, and it was on my Kindle because I let them borrow my Kindle Unlimited. I was like, you know what, I'm going to read it. It does sound interesting. It's about werewolves, and it's not something that I would normally read, so I was like, why not, you know? Why not try and read something different? I think I rated this for 2 stars, just because it is YA. Well, not really YA. I wouldn't say it's YA at all. But it wasn't the type of level that I was expecting. But it basically follows a woman who has a difficult past, and she ends up having 3 fated partners, so it's like a why choose type thing, which I just wasn't expecting. I went into it thinking it was love triangle, and I wasn't going to read it at first because I don't like love triangle, but then I think I like researched it quickly and I was like, oh, why choose, okay. But I thought it was going to be like why choose between 2 and not 3, so that's why I was a little bit shocked. But yeah, I'm going to continue on with the series, but I don't know if I will. Like, I just feel like I'm not really interested. I don't really remember too many details about this book, as you can probably tell, so I don't know. We'll see how I feel. Maybe if I can get the audiobook. Then I read Alive and Wells, and this is like a small town type read, and this follows Cecilia, who is in an abusive relationship. She's actually married to this person and she is desperate to get out, and she does eventually end up escaping to this small town, and she ends up going on to a cattle ranch, and she makes a new life there. She ends up meeting her grumpy boss Austin, and they end up like forming a connection, all that stuff, but then her past comes back to haunt her. This one I will discuss in an upcoming in my mood reading vlog. I don't know when that's coming out. I don't know if you've already seen it or not, so I do talk about it more there. But I did find it a little bit hard to get into, but like near the end it was more interesting, and I found it a bit hard to like feel a connection between the characters. Then I read Tell Me Lies, because season 3 of Tell Me Lies came out, and I was like, I've been wanting to read this book for a while, so why not? And I wanted to see the comparison because I've heard a lot of people say that the show compared to the book was a lot different, and that is true. It is really different. I wasn't expecting how different it was going to be, but if you don't know, you probably do, but if you don't know, this just follows a toxic relationship of Lucy and Stefan over an 8-year period. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but just a quick summary. It was interesting to read about, but I don't know, I feel like I was probably just expecting more from it. I would definitely say I prefer the show. Then I read Take My Love by Brooke Montgomery. Absolutely love Brooke Montgomery's books. Our MMC, and he is going through a heartbreak because his fiance recently broke up with him a few weeks before the wedding, and so now he's gone back to the small town that he grew up in. He is looking for a place to stay and a job, and he's kind of like trying to get his life back together, and that is when he sees our FMC, who's actually his best friend's sister, so it's also known as brother's best friend, and they did end up having like a one night stand type thing, but then a miscommunication type thing, that's what I'm gonna say. And it was, yeah, I really enjoyed this book, one of my favourites. I always know that if I'm going to pick up a Brooke Montgomery book, I'm going to love it. Then I read Between Hate and Desire. Follows Hunter and Lennon. So they meet at like a bar thing and they have like a conversation. Hunter is like, oh my goodness, I am already intrigued in woman. He gives her his number, I think, and they was like going to meet at the end, but she never shows, so he ends up going back home being like, oh my goodness, I can't believe she didn't show. Like, I really thought there was something, even though like they only had a small conversation. And then he ends up finding her in his kitchen. Turns out she is now his roommate's girlfriend, and it turns into like an enemies to lovers type thing. And then the tragedy happens where his roommate and best friend ends up passing away in an accident, and so kind of like they have to like rely on each other, all that stuff. It is a really good book. I did feel like it was a little bit long at times, but I'd highly recommend it. And then what I loved about this book is that it's set up for book 2. You get to see like a little snippet, so I had to go straight into book 2 because I was really intrigued. And this follows Mason and Sophie, and Sophie is in an abusive relationship, and so you do discover kind of at the end of the second book also, but you explore a lot more obviously in their book. And then there's Mason and Sophie. Sophie is Lennon's from the first book's sister, by the way. That's how they're connected. And then Mason is a friend of Hunter's, or you know, they all know each other. But Sophie and Mason ended up having a one night stand one time in a bar, and then they ended up like going to their friends like they thought, but it turns out they was meeting the same people, and so it was kind of like, you know, awkward, didn't know who each other was type thing. And then yeah, so that is kind of the storyline for that, but again, really enjoyed this one. And then I went straight into the third book, and that follows Liam and Maddie, and this one was very different from the other ones, I would say. But Liam has a gambling addiction type thing, and he ends up getting himself involved with the mafia accidentally. Maddie has always like, don't want to say threw herself at him, but kind of like throughout the years, kind of like brokenly type thing, and she's a lot younger as well, so it's kind of like a she's off limits type thing, sort of the storyline for that one. And then finally I read all 4 books in the Wicked series, and I did really enjoy this series actually. I read it knowing that a lot of people really enjoy Wicked, and I thought I'm going to read something different again from what I normally read, and so I read it and I really enjoyed it. I read the books in a whole weekend because I was borrowing the books from a family member, so I read it in a whole weekend, and I did enjoy them. I think I rated them like 3 stars. I would recommend if you like Wicked or like Wizard of Oz. Those are all the books that I read in January. Thank you all so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave this emoji if you're watching to the end, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!